Hey everybody, welcome to Q&A video number 54. Make sure to keep asking questions, doesn't matter what they're about. They can be about anything. Just know I don't respond to review requests or Let's Play requests in these videos, but I will respond to them in the comments. You can post your questions in the comments below. You can send them to me via the form I've got set up, or you can put them in the discussion topic on the Steam group. Gameplay in the background is Xenonauts. Do not expect masterful gameplay. I was basically just fiddling around with it, seeing how the interface was, trying to get used to it, that sort of thing. I am working on getting it played out so I can actually do a review of it, so look forward to that in the future, but it's not going to be anytime soon, because it may be like XCOM in a lot of ways, but it is certainly not XCOM, so I need some time to actually really get down into the nitty-gritty of it. At any rate, let's start with a question from Mr. Beaner97. Thoughts on the new consoles? And if you think they'll need to be replaced sooner than the usual 5-year cycle due to how pathetic they kind of are. Well, I don't really care. The new consoles really aren't much more powerful than the gaming PC I've got right now, and keep in mind, I originally built this thing back in 08, and since then I have obviously upgraded. I've stuck in an additional 2 gigs of RAM. I had to replace the graphics card at one point, and now I have a quad core as opposed to a dual core. But other than that, it hasn't really changed all that much. So when you talk about these new consoles, and they're really not that much more powerful than what I've got, it's kind of saying something. So when you actually get into the new consoles and you see how not only are they kind of underpowered comparatively, they got baffling decisions like the Xbox One and its basically tri-OS thing. It's got the intermediary OS that switches between the Xbox OS and what is basically a stripped down Windows 8. I have no idea why they decided to do that. All it does is tie up system resources, and the decision just baffles me in general. Meanwhile, the PS4 is just kind of there, and it doesn't really have anything on it that I'm particularly interested in that I can't get on PC anyway. A lot of people be like, "Oh, Bloodborne, that's going to be fantastic because From Software, blah, blah, blah." People give in to hype all the time, right? Will they need to be replaced sooner than the usual 5-year cycle? What usual 5-year cycle? We've never had a 5-year cycle. I mean, the last consoles lasted for quite a long time. It's the longest console generation we've had. And before that, it was only slightly shorter, really. There's not really a 5-year cycle here. But, I guess you mean that you just happen to have consoles getting released usually around the 5-year mark. Not so much that it's a cycle, it's really more of a, it just happens to be around that. So, will they need to be replaced sooner? Probably not. They're not selling well, though. I can tell you that. I mean, they're selling, sure, but not as well as people are hoping. So, we'll see where that goes, I guess. I certainly have no reason to get them. I mean, I've got a PC. Why would I need to get a PS4 or an Xbox One? I mean, I might get a Wii U just so I can play Wii games, but that'd be the only real reason I would actually get one. That and maybe because I actually like Nintendo games, and so I'd be like, hey, well, there's going to be a new Zelda, there's already Hyrule Warriors, and things like that. Might be worth picking up at some point, but even then, I wouldn't pick it up at anywhere near what they've been asking for it. Now, the only real console I'm interested in right now is the 3DS, because it just has some games on it that I want to play. Anyway, let's move on to a question from Grand High Pooba. Are you a fan of the new VR craze? Do you see yourself buying one in the near future, or do you think it will go the way of 3D TV? VR isn't really a new thing. It's been around for a long time. And the ideal of having full virtual reality when it comes to video games has been just this sci-fi dream. It's a nerdy dream, and we all hope it will actually happen someday. The tech isn't quite there yet, though. What he's specifically referring to is stuff like the Oculus. I think it's cool tech. I don't see it being particularly great. I imagine that in my particular case, it would especially be problematic because I would probably get some motion sickness from it. I have noticed that people who have used the Oculus tend to report if it has any negatives. It does usually include the whole nausea, motion sickness thing, so they need to work around that. But I think it's cool that they're trying for it. They're trying to actually develop the tech, and they're not doing what happened before with things like the Virtual Boy, which was a piece of crap. And instead they're doing something that actually has a plausible use. It'd be more of an enthusiast thing. It'd be more of a gimmick or a novelty. But it's cool. And that's the thing. It's just cool. It's not really necessary. So I don't really see myself getting one of those unless they really improve the tech and just go all out on it. Make it something that's well worth having. Next question is from Games Dude. Do you have autism, and has it helped you in your modern gaming career? Or reviewing career, actually. Yeah. Do I have autism? I have no idea. I have never been diagnosed. And even then, it's not something that you really are finding reliable diagnoses. So, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. If I do, it's not that big of a deal, really. Anyway, moving on to a question from Rip Out Your Prejudice. How much ball clenching do you suffer from when game Y is compared to very popular game X, like Hellraid with Skyrim? Ugh, man. I hate it when people do stuff like that. Much like I hate it when people say things like they're comparing, say, Half-Life 2 with Call of Duty. Why? They're two completely different styles of FPS. It'd be like comparing the original Quake to something like BioShock Infinite. Two completely different styles of game. And yet, people act like they're truly comparable, that you can sit there and put these things side by side and say, this is better, this is worse. Hellraid is more along the lines of something like Hexen or Heretic than frickin' Skyrim. So why are people comparing it to Skyrim? Because that's the only thing they know that's first person and medieval fantasy. It's infuriating when people do stuff like that. And people do this all the time with all sorts of different things. And it drives me crazy. Because they're not seeing the games for what they are, and they're just saying, well, I'm going to just compare it to this random popular game that I know, and it looks inferior because it's not this popular game, or blah, blah, blah. Or even if they're not being condescending about it, they don't really see it for what it is. They're just comparing two completely different things like it's actually comparable. So that just gets infuriating no matter what. And finally, we have a question from Remicide. I guess that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. What are your thoughts on how death is handled in games? I don't mean from a moral perspective, but rather from a mechanical one, i.e. the game over state. Some games have death as a mechanic, like in the Souls series. Planescape Torment does something similar, but it still allows for save scumming. Some games do the checkpoint thing, and there are probably other systems like that. I'm talking specifically about single-player games and campaigns here. Basically, what is your preferred method of handling game over? Do you have any ideas on how games could do it differently? Well, it depends on how they do it as to what I feel like it's... I can tell you one thing. The only system I despise, no matter what, doesn't matter what game it's in, is the checkpoint thing. I hate that. It is infuriating. It's a console contrivance, really. And we really should never have gone that route. Because honestly, even on a console, you should be able to have a save anywhere option. Just straight up. There's really no reason to do a checkpoint save system, because you're always going to have something wrong with regards to where the checkpoint is set, and it's just going to get annoying. So if someone is, for instance, is really bad at platforming and they get to a certain part of a game where they have to do a platforming segment and then they accidentally miss the platform and die, well, now they have to start from somewhere that might be 10 minutes earlier than where they actually were. Now they had to go through all of that over again. Why? Because they decided that's where we're going to stick the checkpoint. That's infuriating. Other systems can be interesting. The Souls series, I feel, actually doesn't handle it all that well. Yes, death is a mechanic, but it's honestly more annoying than anything else in my experience. It's just like, oh, you died. You can go back here to get all your stuff back. Okay. That's it. Maybe there's something else later on in the game, but it's all I've found thus far. It's just kind of annoying. The way Planescape did it was kind of cool because that was actually tied into the plot. It was like, well, why is death handled this particular way? What's going on with that? It was a source of mystery, not just, hey, you happen to die and then come back. So there are ways of incorporating it, but the issue is, how do you actually manage to do something interesting with it? Well, there's not a lot of things you can do with it, really. I mean, a game over is a game over. The entire point of a game over is, well, you managed to screw up to the point where you just failed, and now you need to go back from a save point and go back into it. If you do something like almost removing death altogether, like they did with Prince of Persia 2008, it makes the game boring. Unless you do it the Planescape Torment style, which was actually pretty interesting. Even though it didn't really do all that much to the actual gameplay, it added a lot of having to go back to where you were. But it was just kind of cool how they handled that with the plot, and so that was what made that interesting. Dark Souls, I feel, just makes it annoying. I don't really know how you could handle a game over with a very interesting manner. It would have to be very, very specific, and I can't really do a lot of brainstorming for something that specific on a Q&A video. That would just be pretty absurd. I'd have to think on that for quite a while, actually. But if I ever think of something, I'll see about letting you know. Anyway, that was Q&A 54. Make sure to keep asking questions. I really do need them. So, if you don't ask me questions, I can't do Q&As. Anyway, ask me questions, and I'll catch you guys in later videos.